Laura had always been a curious soul, a trait that both her friends and family admired and feared. It was this curiosity that led her to move into the old Victorian house at the edge of town. The house, rumored to be haunted, had been on the market for years, but Laura wasn't deterred by the whispers of ghosts and eerie sounds. She saw potential in the grand architecture and spacious rooms, envisioning a life of peaceful solitude. The first few days in her new home were uneventful. Laura spent her time unpacking, decorating, and exploring the expansive property. It wasn't until the fourth day that she noticed the door to the basement. Hidden behind a large bookshelf in the study, the door was old and covered in dust, as if it hadn't been opened in decades. Laura hesitated for a moment before her curiosity got the better of her. She pushed the bookshelf aside and pulled the door open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and started down the creaking stairs, each step echoing ominously in the confined space. The basement was musty and cold, filled with old furniture covered in white sheets, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Laura shone her flashlight around, the beam cutting through the darkness. She felt a chill run down her spine as she noticed an old wooden trunk in the corner of the room. It looked out of place, newer than the rest of the furniture. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, Laura approached the trunk. She knelt down and examined it closely, finding it unlocked. Taking a deep breath, she lifted the lid. Inside, she found a collection of old photographs and journals. As she flipped through the photographs, she realized they depicted a family that once lived in the house, parents and two children, a boy and a girl. The journals belonged to the mother, Mary, and detailed the family's life in the house. The entries started off happy and mundane but grew darker as time went on. Mary wrote about strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, whispers in the night, and an overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to permeate the house. The final entry sent a shiver down Laura's spine. "There's something in the basement. It's watching us. I fear for my family." Laura closed the journal, her hands trembling. She suddenly felt like she wasn't alone. The basement seemed to grow colder, and the shadows in the corners appeared to move. She stood up quickly, deciding she had seen enough for one day. As she turned to leave, her flashlight flickered and went out, plunging her into darkness. Panic set in as Laura fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. She could hear faint whispers, just as Mary had described, growing louder and more frantic. Finally, the flashlight came back to life, and Laura bolted up the stairs, slamming the door behind her. She pushed the bookshelf back into place, her heart pounding in her chest. That night, Laura couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the whispers, now coming from the walls of her bedroom. She tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, but the fear was too real. She decided to return to the basement in the morning, determined to find out what was causing these disturbances. The next day, armed with a crowbar and a stronger flashlight, Laura descended into the basement once more. She headed straight for the trunk, hoping to find more clues. As she rifled through the contents, she noticed a false bottom. Using the crowbar, she pried it open and discovered a hidden compartment containing a small ornate box. Inside the box was a collection of old keys and a note written in Mary's handwriting. "The keys to the past. Find the door and you'll find the truth." Laura's mind raced as she tried to understand the cryptic message. She decided to search the basement more thoroughly, looking for any hidden doors or compartments. Hours passed, and Laura's frustration grew. Just as she was about to give up, she noticed a slight draft coming from behind a large, dusty mirror. She moved the mirror aside to reveal a small door, locked and covered in cobwebs. With shaking hands, she tried each key until one finally fit. The door creaked open to reveal a narrow passageway, leading deeper into the darkness. Laura hesitated, fear gnawing at her, but her curiosity pushed her forward. The passageway led to a small, hidden room, untouched by time. In the center of the room was an old wooden table with a single chair. On the table lay a series of old documents and a letter addressed to the new owner. Laura sat down and opened the letter, her heart racing. It was from Mary, detailing the true history of the house. The family had moved in, unaware of the dark history that lay within its walls. Mary wrote about a previous owner, a man named Charles, who had been obsessed with the occult. He had performed rituals in the basement, attempting to summon otherworldly beings. The house had been tainted ever since, the malevolent presence never truly leaving. As Laura read on, the whispers grew louder, almost deafening. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder and turned around, but there was nothing there. The shadows seemed to close in on her, the darkness suffocating. She knew she had to leave, but something compelled her to finish reading. The final lines of the letter were a warning. The presence will never leave. It feeds on fear and curiosity. You must leave this house before it consumes you, just as it did to us. Laura dropped the letter, her mind reeling. She stumbled out of the hidden room and ran up the stairs, desperate to escape the house. As she reached the front door, she felt the weight of the house pressing down on her. The whispers followed her, growing more frantic. With one final burst of strength, Laura flung the door open and ran into the daylight, collapsing on the front lawn. The house stood silent and foreboding behind her. Laura knew she could never return. She had uncovered the dark secret of the basement, but it had come at a cost. The malevolent presence would remain, waiting for its next victim, feeding on fear and curiosity. Greg had never thought of himself as a fearful man. He faced life's challenges with a stoic resolve, always pushing forward regardless of the obstacles. However, there was one place that stirred an inexplicable dread within him: the basement of his childhood home. He returned to his hometown after his mother passed away. The old house, nestled on the outskirts of a sleepy town, stood as a testament to his family's history. Greg's task was to sort through his mother's belongings and decide what to keep, sell, or discard. It was a somber duty, one he approached with a heavy heart. Days turned into weeks as he meticulously combed through the house, room by room. He relived countless memories, both joyous and painful. However, the basement remained untouched. Each time he passed by the door leading down, a chill would run down his spine. He avoided it, telling himself he would get to it eventually. One dreary afternoon, with the sky overcast and a light drizzle pattering against the windows, Greg found himself standing before the basement door. His hand hovered over the doorknob, hesitating. Taking a deep breath, he turned the knob and swung the door open. The stale, musty air greeted him as he flicked on the light switch. The dim bulb cast long shadows on the worn wooden stairs leading down into the darkness. He descended slowly, each creak of the steps echoing in the confined space. The basement was as he remembered it, cluttered with old furniture, boxes of forgotten items, and the odd collection of tools. He set to work, hoping to distract himself from the uneasy feeling gnawing at his gut. As he sifted through the piles of junk, Greg's attention was drawn to a small, dust-covered trunk tucked away in a corner. It was locked, but the lock was old and rusty. With a bit of effort, he managed to break it open. Inside, he found a collection of journals, yellowed with age, and a series of photographs. The photographs were of his parents, looking much younger and happier than he remembered them. But as he flipped through them, his heart sank. One photograph showed his mother standing with another man, a man Greg had never seen before. Curiosity piqued. Greg picked up the first journal and began to read. The entries were written in his mother's neat handwriting, detailing her life from the time she moved into the house. As he read, a pattern began to emerge. His mother wrote of strange occurrences in the house, particularly in the basement. She mentioned hearing voices, seeing shadows move, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread whenever she went down there. The entries grew more frantic and disjointed as time went on, culminating in a final chilling entry. "I fear what lies beneath this house. The secrets it holds are too much to bear. If anyone finds this, know that I tried to protect you. The truth is hidden, but it must be uncovered. Be careful." Greg's hands trembled as he closed the journal. He looked around the basement, the shadows seeming to dance menacingly in the dim light. Determined to uncover the truth, he began a thorough search of the basement, moving boxes and furniture, inspecting every inch of the room. Behind a stack of old wooden crates, Greg found a trapdoor. It was hidden under a threadbare rug, its edges worn from years of neglect. His heart pounded as he pried it open, revealing a dark, narrow passageway leading further underground. The air that wafted up was cold and damp, carrying a faint, putrid odor. Armed with a flashlight, Greg descended into the passageway. The walls were rough and unyielding, the narrow space making him feel claustrophobic. The passage led to a small chamber, its walls lined with strange symbols etched into the stone. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which lay an old leather-bound book. Greg approached the pedestal cautiously. The book seemed out of place, almost as if it was waiting for him. He opened it, revealing pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches. The language was unfamiliar, but the drawings were clear enough. Diagrams of the house, with specific focus on the basement and the chamber he now stood in. One sketch caught his eye. It depicted a hidden room beneath the basement, accessible only through the trapdoor he had found. The notes alongside the sketch detailed rituals and incantations. suggesting that the room was used for some dark purpose. As he read, a chilling realization dawned on him. The man in the photograph, the one standing with his mother, was involved in whatever sinister activities took place in this hidden chamber. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the chamber, extinguishing his flashlight. Greg's heart raced as he fumbled in the darkness, the oppressive silence pressing down on him. He could feel the presence of something or someone watching him. Panic surged through him, and he bolted for the passageway, scrambling back to the basement. He slammed the trapdoor shut and leaned against it, gasping for breath. The basement seemed darker now, the shadows deeper and more menacing. Greg knew he couldn't leave the house without uncovering the full truth. He needed to know what had happened to his mother and what secrets the basement held. Greg spent the next few days researching the symbols and language from the book. He reached out to experts, historians, and anyone who might have insight into the mysterious chamber. His search led him to a local historian who specialized in occult practices and local folklore. The historian, a wizened old man named Edgar, listened intently as Greg recounted his discoveries. Edgar's eyes widened with recognition when Greg described the symbols and the hidden chamber. "You've stumbled upon something very dark, my boy," Edgar said, his voice grave. "This house has a history that goes back centuries. It was built on land once used for occult rituals. The man in the photograph with your mother was likely a practitioner of these dark arts." Greg felt a chill run down his spine. "But why my mother? Why our family?" Edgar sighed. "Sometimes these practices require a connection to the land, and it appears your family was chosen for reasons we may never fully understand. Your mother must have discovered something she wasn't meant to, and she tried to protect you." Determined to confront whatever darkness lurked beneath the house, Greg returned to the basement, armed with the knowledge and tools Edgar had provided. He reopened the trapdoor and descended into the hidden chamber once more. This time, he was prepared. Greg set up protective wards and began a cleansing ritual, hoping to dispel whatever malevolent force resided there. As he chanted the incantations, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist. A low guttural growl echoed through the chamber, sending a wave of fear through him. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was the man from the photograph, his face twisted in a malevolent grin. "You shouldn't have come here," the man hissed. "This place is not for the living." Greg stood his ground, continuing the ritual despite his terror. The figure advanced, its form shifting and contorting in unnatural ways. Just as the figure was about to reach him, there was a blinding flash of light, and the chamber was filled with an ear-piercing scream. The figure dissipated into smoke, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Greg collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. As he made his way back to the basement, he knew that the house, and his family's legacy, would never be the same, but he also knew that he had finally uncovered the truth and could begin to heal. In the days that followed, Greg finished clearing out the house, preparing it for sale. The basement no longer held the same fear for him. He had confronted the past and laid its ghosts to rest. As he locked the front door for the last time, Greg felt a sense of closure. The house with all its secrets would no longer haunt him. As Greg stood at the front door, a sense of closure washing over him, he took a final look at the house. The memories, both good and bad, seemed to blend into a distant past. He turned the key, locking away the ghosts that had plagued him for so long. Life moved forward. Greg sold the house and moved to a new city, determined to leave the haunting memories behind. He found a small apartment, got a new job, and began to rebuild his life. The shadows that once loomed over him seemed to dissipate with each passing day. Months went by, and Greg found himself engrossed in his new routine. He made new friends, explored the city, and even started dating again. It felt like the dark chapter of his life was finally behind him. But the past has a way of creeping back when least expected. One evening, as Greg was settling into his apartment, his phone rang. It was a call from an unknown number. Hesitant, he answered. "Hello? Is this Greg?" A woman's voice asked, trembling with emotion. "Yes, this is Greg. Who is this?" The woman took a deep breath. "My name is Laura. I think we need to talk. It's about your mother and the house." Greg's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? I've moved on from all that." "I understand," Laura said softly, "but there's something you need to know. Can we meet?" Reluctantly, Greg agreed. They met at a quiet cafe, and Laura introduced herself. She explained that she had been researching local history and had come across the story of his family and the house. "There's more to the story, Greg. The rituals, the hidden chamber. They were part of something much bigger. Greg listened in stunned silence as Laura revealed that the man in the photograph, the one who had haunted his mother, was part of a secret society that practiced ancient and forbidden rituals. The society had disbanded long ago, but its members had left traces of their dark practices throughout the town. Your mother discovered their secrets and tried to stop them, Laura explained, but she didn't have the means to destroy their influence completely. That's why she hid the journals and tried to protect you. Greg felt a surge of anger and fear. Why are you telling me this now? Because, Laura said, her eyes wide with urgency, I believe the society is trying to reassemble. Strange things have been happening in the town again. People have gone missing, and there have been reports of shadowy figures and unexplained phenomena. Greg's mind raced. The horrors he thought he had left behind were far from over. What do you need me to do? Laura reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather-bound journal. This belonged to your mother. She left it with a trusted friend for safekeeping. It contains the final clues to uncovering the society's secrets and putting an end to their dark practices for good. Greg took the journal, feeling its weight in his hands. The sense of dread returned, but alongside it was a newfound resolve. He had faced the darkness before and survived. Now he had a chance to end it once and for all. With Laura's help, Greg began to decipher the cryptic entries in the journal. The clues led them to hidden locations around the town, each one revealing more about the society's activities and their ultimate goal. They discovered that the society planned to perform a final powerful ritual that would cement their influence and grant them unimaginable power. As they pieced together the puzzle, Greg and Laura realized they had to act quickly. The ritual was set to take place on the anniversary of the society's founding, just days away. They gathered the necessary tools and allies, preparing for a final confrontation. The night of the ritual, Greg and Laura arrived at the location, an old abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. The air was thick with tension as they navigated the dark, foreboding halls. They could hear the faint chanting of the society members, growing louder as they approached the central chamber. Bursting into the room, they confronted the society's leader, the man from the photograph. He sneered at them, confident in his power. You can't stop us, he taunted. Our time has come. But Greg and Laura were prepared. Using the knowledge from the journal, they disrupted the ritual, breaking the circle and scattering the society members. The leader's face twisted in rage and fear as his plans unraveled. In the ensuing chaos, Greg faced the leader in a final desperate struggle. Drawing upon the strength and resolve that had seen him through the darkest times, he overpowered the man and destroyed the central artifact that powered the ritual. As the artifact shattered, a blinding light filled the chamber, and the oppressive darkness that had lingered over the town dissipated. The society's influence was broken, and their members fled, their power gone. Greg and Laura emerged from the mansion, battered but victorious. The town would be safe, and the legacy of darkness that had haunted his family was finally laid to rest. Greg looked at Laura, a sense of peace washing over him. It's over, he said, his voice filled with relief. Laura nodded, smiling. You did it, Greg. Your mother would be proud. As they walked away from the mansion, Greg felt a sense of closure he had never known before. The past had been confronted, the darkness vanquished, and for the first time in a long time, he felt truly free.